Do you constantly have anxiety about your blood pressure, even though your doctor has told you you are fine? If so, this video is for you, as I'm going to show you how to counter the negative thoughts that come with blood pressure anxiety. In cognitive behavioural therapy, you are taught to put your negative thoughts on trial, and this is how. Just like in a court of law, we have a defence lawyer and a prosecution lawyer. The prosecution lawyer has to prove that the thought is true, and the defence lawyer that it is not true. The final decision is made by the judge, based on the evidence presented. But you play the part of both lawyers and the judge. So let's put the thought that you have high blood pressure on trial. But first we need to really capture the source of the anxiety. So ask yourself, what is the worst thing about that? You may have to ask this a few times to get to the real source of the anxiety. For example, Tom here is worried that he might have high blood pressure. When asked what's the worst thing about that, he replies, it means I might have narrowing of the arteries. And what's the worst thing about that? He then replies, I might have a stroke or a heart attack and die. So the thought on trial is, I might have high blood pressure, so could die. So let's do the easy bit first. What evidence is there that you might have high blood pressure and may die as a result? So you might write, my blood pressure reading was 145/90 this morning, which Google says is high blood pressure. My heart has been racing and I feel dizzy at times. Google says high blood pressure can lead to strokes and heart attacks. So the prosecution has a strong case. Now it's time for the defence lawyer to counter that case. People with anxiety often struggle to find evidence against their anxious thoughts, so I will give you some help. Here are some questions to ask yourself. What did the doctor say? How old are you? Most cases of high blood pressure don't appear until after 45. What else might explain the high readings? See my first video on blood pressure anxiety if you're struggling. There's a link at the top. What else could be causing the racing heart and dizziness? Had you been sat down for 5 minutes before you took the reading as is recommended? Were you worrying about anything at the time you took your blood pressure? Let's look at the risk factors. Are you diabetic? Do you have an unhealthy diet? Do you exercise? Are you overweight? Do you drink too much alcohol? Do you smoke? Is there a history of high blood pressure in the family? Sometimes a defence lawyer has to probe deeper, so a good question to ask in this case would be, how old was your grandfather when he was diagnosed with high blood pressure? And how old is he now? So now you have looked at the evidence in favour of this thought and against this thought, if you were a judge, how would you sum up the evidence? I always recommend starting with the words even though. So even though my monitor reading was high and I feel a bit dizzy, I was anxious when I took my blood pressure, and my symptoms do fit with anxiety. And I'm young and healthy, and my grandfather is still alive at 82 despite having high blood pressure. Now a good question to ask yourself is, what is the best thing about that? That's right, you are not likely to die anytime soon. Now of course Tom here is young and healthy, so not everyone will answer the questions in the same way, but you will get a more balanced view, and that will reduce the anxiety that the thought brings. Even if you have genuine high blood pressure, an exercise like this can put it into perspective, as many people diagnosed with high blood pressure live into old age, thanks to blood pressure medication or lifestyle changes. An important part of this exercise is writing it down, and this is why. Anxious thoughts come from the part of the brain that deals with fear, but by writing it down it engages the logical part of the brain. The aim is to get the logical part of the brain to overrule the fear part of the brain, so that you're not constantly taking your blood pressure. The more you're able to do this, the less you'll get thoughts about your blood pressure, which means less anxiety. If you'd like to learn more about combating health anxiety, check out my health anxiety playlist.